The results-driven Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce invites you to connect your business with 1,000 other companies just like yours, including education and workforce development, healthcare, professional services, manufacturing, retail, nonprofit, trades and vocations, hospitality, among many others, and benefit with chamber programs and services such as government affairs, energy and economic development, small business assistance, networking opportunities, women in business programs, young people in business programs, and more. We invite your business to become a starring member of the Merrimack Valley Chamber today and see what a difference this chamber will make for you. Join your community's most trusted, effective, and relevant business network connection today. The Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce.
My friends and I are turning, my friend turns 61st next July, so we'll start our 60th like we did at the celebration. So we're going to do
First, let me say thank you to all of you for being here today. This is obviously one of our most important programs of the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. Our Women in Business series is critically important to us. As you know, we have a quarterly lunch program, and then we culminate the year with an annual forum, always keynoted by our Congresswoman, Lori Trahan. And let me tell you something about the Congresswoman. And I mean this in all sincerity. We deal with business issues every day in the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. We are the most effective, most respected, most trusted business network. And when our members call with issues and we require the aid of someone on the federal level, we call Lori Trahan's office. And if we don't have her personally, we have a member of her staff literally there for us. And I can tell you, we see her, Laurie, we see your staff almost every week, it seems like, on issues. And I want to say thank you because we don't just see our Congresswoman on photo ops or times like this. We see her office literally every week. And I ask you to give her a round of applause for that. It's true. I want to introduce the moderator. Tricia Saboulis is the chairperson of the Merrimack Valley Chamber Board of Directors Business Development Committee. She's also a woman entrepreneur, having been the vice president of Michaud Insurance Agency, which has grown and expanded already, and she'll be moderating the program. Please welcome our vice chairman, business development of our Chamber of Commerce, Tricia Saboulis, and she'll be the moderator. And thank you to all our speakers. Good luck. I just left you there for the honor.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Nice to see so many of you here today. Thanks for being here. And I am so honored to be your moderator today and to introduce these phenomenal women. So we'll just get right to it. So our featured speaker is Congresswoman Lori Trahan. She proudly serves Massachusetts' 3rd District. Growing up in a working family in Lowell, Lori learned the principles of sacrifice, hard work, and grit. Her father was a union iron worker, and her mother, a domestic worker, juggled several part-time jobs while raising Lori and her 3 sisters. The first in her family to graduate college, Lori earned a scholarship to play Division I volleyball at Georgetown University. Like many, Lori was introduced to public service as a college student in Washington, D.C. After college, she joined former Congressman Marty Meehan's staff, working her way up to Chief of Staff. She deeply enjoyed working to serve her hometown and people across Massachusetts, but she also witnessed firsthand the increasing partisanship that served wealthy special interests instead of families like the ones she grew up in. Lori moved to the private sector as the only female executive at a tech company. Her passion for bringing women into leadership positions led her to co-found a woman-owned and operated consulting firm. In that role, she advised various companies on business strategy and how to create the ideal conditions for employees, especially women, to thrive. When the coronavirus pandemic hit in March of 2020, Lori rolled up her sleeves to deliver essential support to families, frontline workers, small businesses, and students. She secured hundreds of millions of dollars in federal relief funding to keep workers and businesses afloat, ensure hospitals and health centers remained open, and shorten the Commonwealth's road to recovery. As vaccines were being distributed, Lori worked around the clock to make sure individual communities had the resources and support necessary to get shots into arms and save lives. Now, as a co-founder of the Pandemic Preparedness Caucus, she's working to end the United States' dependence on a foreign supply chain for essential personnel, protective equipment, and ensure that our nation is never caught flat-footed by another pandemic again. As families across the 3rd District recover, Lori is working to ensure that no one is left behind. Let's hear it for Lori.
Well, thank you very much. I think that introduction gets a little longer each year. I appreciate it. And it's great to be back here with all of you. I don't think I've missed one since I was sworn in a few years ago. We're going to get to discussion very quickly, right, Joe? Can I do Q&A and all that good stuff? Yeah, great. There is a fair amount for us to talk about, and I'll touch a little bit on sort of the legislative priorities, some of the things that we've done since we were last together at this luncheon. But I'm going to have enormous guilt if you all don't eat while I'm speaking, because it'll get cold, and that's what women do for each other. So please eat. I can handle the forks clinking. It's no big deal at all. So many of you know me. I see a lot of familiar faces out there, and you know that I'm the mom of 2 young girls. I'm the stepmom of 3 older boys in their 20s. And my experience working and owning a company is probably very similar to yours. I know how important childcare is, because there were times when the math didn't work for me either. But I stayed in the workforce because if I had left at any point, I would have gotten dinged for that, right? And it's so important that we make sure that the millions of women who have had to leave the workforce during COVID, we get them the tools, we get them childcare so that they can come back. There's nothing more than they want to come back, but we have to make sure that they have the assurance that there's a childcare infrastructure in place for them so that they can, and that we are making progress on mental health issues, something that our moms are seeing firsthand in their homes and in their jobs. One of the things that I think is important, I came in on this sort of pink wave, as they call it, in 2018, where we elected a record number of women to the U.S. Congress. And it was a really important moment in our country's history, and I think one we have to not forget and leverage into the future, because when you have more women around the table, we think differently about education and guidance counseling and mental health services. We think differently about the child care discussion, about workforce discussion, right? I'm sure every single small business in the audience right now is having trouble with workforce. How are we going to get more people so that we don't have to close early, so that we don't have to not have another shift because we can't fill it? And those are issues that when you have more women at the table, you just talk about more innovative ideas. You have different perspectives, and when you harness that diversity, you typically have better decisions. That was my experience when I was in the private sector for 13 years. It is 100% my experience down in Washington. So we do have some big legislative achievements to discuss. Certainly the American Rescue Plan, those dollars were really helpful. One, we had to keep our small businesses afloat during COVID. I think many folks maybe took advantage of the PPP money, the EIDL loans. So many of them were forgiven, which was imperative that we do that, that we did that. It was also really important that we put shots in arms at the cadence that we did at the beginning of last year. That allowed us to reopen our schools. I have 8 and 12-year-old daughters, and I couldn't get them back to the classroom fast enough. And I'm not saying that, but I think everybody felt that, right? The kids needed to be with their peers, they needed to be with their teachers, and we had to do that safely, and we had to do that in a rapid, accelerated way. But the ARPA funds did so much more. I mean, so many of our communities, our cities, our small towns received funds directly. That allowed us to keep people on the payroll, right? Our law enforcement, our firefighters, our teachers, making sure that we could cover that lost revenue. making sure that we were helping people directly, right? There were so many people who couldn't afford their rent. They couldn't afford to put food on their table. And we had direct payments to hardworking families like the one I grew up in, certainly, but also, folks who were struggling to make ends meet before COVID and were really on the brink, whether it was losing their housing, having their kids home from school, no longer having that school breakfast or that school lunch, and making sure that we had those services we actually because of the child tax credit, we made the biggest progress ever in our nation's history on child hunger. And shame on us if we don't keep that up, right? We don't want to go back to the way it was. When we talk about, making sure that we're coming back stronger after COVID, it means that we're not going back to a time when we've got young kids that are on the brink of poverty or facing hunger in our communities. The other thing is infrastructure. I think I probably say this over and over when I'm at town halls or when I'm at community forums, because a lot of this can kind of get snuffed out from, community cable news, right? They kind of like to give you the news on the extremes. But we've done a lot of work in Washington that has been bipartisan. The infrastructure bill was bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats just coming together, recognizing that we need to reinvest in our communities. We need to make sure our bridges, like the Bassalier Bridge, finally gets replaced so that it's safe and that Haverhill can count on it. Our water, our sewage systems, our CSOs, all of our stormwater issues, PFAS, which is afflicting a lot of our safe drink water supply, addressed in the infrastructure bill. Our roads, our intersections, bringing manufacturing back to the United States finally. That is in shoring up our supply chains and making sure that we're setting the conditions for American manufacturing, and that is going to have a huge impact on this region, right? We have the bones still in communities like Haverhill and Lawrence and Lowell, where manufacturing once was, a huge driver of our economy, and we're poised to reemerge when the semiconductor industry comes back. When we onshore semiconductor manufacturing, semiconductor advanced chip design, all of that used to be done right here. And so that is something that with the federal government's commitment to bringing those jobs back, we will be poised to win as a state and just as a region. The last bill that we passed before breaking for the August break was the largest climate action bill ever in our country's history. Making sure that we were giving incentives and rebates and subsidies to households so that they could invest in things like heat pumps and energy efficient appliances. Really important so that we can decrease energy bills going forward. We know that those energy bills, they skyrocket in the 6 months and the long winters here in New England. And we have to make sure that we're making the investments so that those energy bills decline over time. And our transition off of fossil fuels, off of the volatility of oil and gas will help decrease costs for hardworking families. It also included decreased costs in healthcare, decreased costs for prescription drugs, finally giving Medicare the ability to negotiate prescription drug prices, capping out-of-pocket expenses for our seniors at $2,000, and capping the cost of insulin finally at $35. Those are huge benefits that are long overdue in our country. We've been talking about them for a long time, but especially in this moment where we're gripped globally with inflation, we need to be doing everything that we can to decrease the price decrease the cost that our families are seeing, and that has been in the form of healthcare, prescription drug prices, and energy costs. Last week I was pressing the Biden administration to release reserves of the New England oil. I'm sure we're going to hear from Hefner's today, because as National Grid and Eversource have been preparing us and giving us their announcements for how we're going to have high electric and heating bills. It's unacceptable. A lot of families can't afford a 40 to 50% increase in any utility bill, never mind possibly two. I know my family couldn't. And so a couple of things that the Congress did was we funded another $1 billion for home heating assistance, the LIHEAP program, which many of you may be familiar with, $37 million coming to the state of Massachusetts so that middle and working class families have assistance when we see an increase in heating bills. But then, like I said, pressing the administration to release New England has its own oil reserve. We have 1 million barrels. By releasing that supply, we will actually decrease those costs for families as well. Let's see, ARPA, infrastructure, CHIPS and Science Act, I touched on a little bit. I will tell you that the CHIPS and Science Act is one of those bills that is huge. It's going to be transformative in our country because it's going to help bring American manufacturing back. It's also going to invest in K-12 STEM programs, which we're long overdue to do, and we need that if we're going to stay globally competitive in this century and the next. But it's also going to make sure that we bring semiconductors back home. Anybody who's bought a car or a washing machine or an iPhone, they're in everything. We used to be the leader. We used to not only design them here in the United States, but make them here in the United States. That has all been offshored, and that we need to bring home because that will decrease costs over the long term as well for basic products, every product. One thing that was mentioned in the intro was that I'm the co-chair of the Pandemic Preparedness Caucus, and it's, I'm sure like many of you were just stunned on how dependent we were on a foreign supply chain during the darkest, first few months of COVID, right? We couldn't get PPE to our health care workers. We couldn't get basic devices, ventilators, or any of those machines to people who need it the most. And we'll never be in that position again. Some of the steps that we've taken, in the last year is so that we can bring that supply chain back home. There's nothing we can't make in this country. There's nothing we can't make right here in Massachusetts. And so part of what I do is making sure that those investments translate to more money and better paying jobs here in Massachusetts so that we can stay competitive. And then finally, there's lots of work we have to do. As much as I talk about some of the achievements, I know that families like mine, like the one I grew up in, are still suffering. My family couldn't have afforded, inflated costs. We couldn't have afforded, so many of the bills, whether it's at the pump or at the grocery store or at the pharmacy. And everything I do in Washington is through that lens. How do we make our hardworking families better off tomorrow than they are today? And so I am very clear-eyed about the work that needs to continue. A few things that I've sort of prioritized in my portfolio of work. I sit on the healthcare subcommittee, so mental health care and wellness is very important. We're just sort of scratching the surface in terms of the level of investment that we're going to need. It's often said that during the Great Depression that shaped, a generation, and frankly, like 2 or 3 generations, right? That experience of going through the Great Depression together really shaped how people worked, how they saved, how they lived. And we're going to go through something similar here post-COVID. It really has shaped the mindset of so many of our young people, our older people, and we have to reckon with that, and we have to make sure that people are set up for success, and that we're creating the programs where people are putting their wellness first. I think it's a big part of getting people back to work, getting people to be productive, getting people to lean in, not just to their learning to get through it, but a lifetime of learning. We also, big tech, a lot of what I do on the Energy Commerce Committee is holding big tech accountable. We know that there's a correlation between mental health, wellness, and our young girls, specifically on social media platforms. We need to make sure that we have age-appropriate design. We need to make sure that we're holding them accountable for the products and the campaigns that they put in front of our our young girls especially. We also need to have basic transparency around how campaigns, online campaigns, targeted advertising, targeted content is being done, because we know that while it is very good for our small business marketers to be able to find a customer, it's also good for me to find a voter and speak to them directly. We also know when that information, when that power gets into bad actors, it can cause things like January 6th and the insurrection on the Capitol. Lastly, I can't stand up at a podium and talk to women business leaders without mentioning the Dobbs decision, which was it was a punch in the stomach, I think, for all of us, even though we saw it coming. There was no real surprise there. We have, I think here in Massachusetts, we get lulled into feeling like we're going to be okay because we have the Roe Act and we have a legislature and an administration that has made sure that we've been upholding the principles of Roe, and we've been a safe state, and it helps your competitiveness, right? Everybody wants to come to Massachusetts to live, to raise their family, to start their business, to grow their business. But I will tell you, and I hate sort of being a downer, but we're all in this together, and it's not something we can take for granted. There's already been too many mentions by national Republicans that the first chance that they get, there will be a national ban on abortion care. And I don't think I have to tell any of you, the women in this room, who have either had a child, had a miscarriage, had an ectopic pregnancy, that when we limit life-saving reproductive care to women, women's lives are at risk. When we criminalize the providers that we rely on to give us good counsel in that room on our health and on our family's health, people's lives are at risk. And so we've had a real benefit here in Massachusetts where we've codified those laws and they're on the books and we're good. But I don't think I have to tell you that those federal laws could be codified as well. That would supersede our state laws. And so it's just a clarion moment, I think, for all of us. Every election is important. Every level of government is important. There are some extreme actors out there that have been on this journey for a long time, and they want to see this become a national ban. And so we can't let that extremism come to the state of Massachusetts. So with that, I said I would be brief and I would get to discussion right away. But there was just too much to tell you this year. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you so much. Before I get to our next speaker, I just wanted to mention that Senator Diana DiZoglio called. She's unable to attend today, but wanted to wish all well and let us know that her office is here in attendance, supporting all of us here. Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Jerry Lynn Darcy. She is currently responsible for some of the area's largest mixed-use developments as the Senior Vice President for the state's fourth largest commercial development company, managing a real estate portfolio of more than 6 million square feet of property at various stages of development and construction. She is the recipient of multiple highly coveted industry awards, including the Boston Business Journal's 40 Under 40, B&T Women of Fire, I love that name, it's Finance, Insurance, and Real Estate, and YWCA's Tribute to Women. She holds a BA in economics, an MBA in management, and maintains a CSL license. Jerry Lynn's greatest achievement is being the mother of 2 daughters who are both enrolled in college at Endicott College and the College of Charleston. Here she is.
Hi there. This is always a special luncheon, and we're usually a part of it. I have had the privilege of speaking at this lunch. I think last time was 2019, and we were on the same panel, and I love being on the panel with so many extraordinary women who are also balancing motherhood and career. So it's great to have everyone together and to continue to empower each other as females in the Merrimack Valley. The other thing I wanted to do is also thank my colleagues who are here today from Lipoli companies. We have the benefit of really having some extraordinary women at our company. Sal Lipoli, as many of you know, the CEO of Lipoli companies, is a champion, an advocate for women. He has a daughter himself, and he is also known as one of the biggest mentors and coaches in the area. He believes in education, and one of the things that we do very well is we engage in community benefits, and everything we do is focused on making the community better. And I think that's one of the things that I love most about what I do. I'm going to be 50 in a few months, which is hard to believe. I can't believe that. So I look back and, believe it or not, 51 years ago, my parents had their wedding reception here. Is that weird? I mean, this was Pat's Beef House, if anyone knows. So I sit here and I'm like, I marvel at it because I still have all of their pictures, and it's crazy to hear that. But they were childhood sweethearts. You know, I have very deep roots locally, and some of you have already heard the story, but I grew up in the area. My grandparents are all very local. In fact, my grandparents touch 3 of the gateway communities that we work in. So my parents met at Tenney High School, so they went to Tenney High, and they were high school sweethearts. So 51 years ago, they had me when they were very young, and I think back, and now I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I think to myself, oh my goodness, they had like me, and I certainly could not do that. So fortunately, I think the young women of today are holding off on having children, and they recognize the challenges and the difficulties that you face having children younger and getting married younger, because there's so much to experience in life, and that's what I really try to tell the girls and teach them, because once you have kids, it's a big responsibility. And I think for me, you know, juggling motherhood and career was very challenging, and I had to make a lot of sacrifices. I could not just leave my industry and stay at home and raise the kids. Fortunately, I had family that helped bring up my daughters, and I think it's really, really great when you can rely on family, and I think a lot of people are actually creating multi-generational housing. So, you know, one of the big drivers for our business model is providing housing. You know, we do a lot of real estate mixed use. We have more than 6 million square feet of real estate. And during COVID, we built a pipeline, and we have permits for more than 2,000 residential units in hand right now. So we're super excited about what we've been able to create. And it's really feeding a need that the state has. I think that we're seeing a paradigm shift in buyer profile and what young people and what empty nesters are looking for in housing. And again, the multi-generational housing is becoming a reality. And part of that is because you benefit. You know, you're helping your older parents or grandparents, and then they're helping you. So that synergy that exists certainly does support women who are trying to stay in the workforce. And I think that when you make that sacrifice, especially for me, 25 years in the industry, if I took time out, it would be very, very difficult to get back in. And I would have to start over. So I made a tough decision, and I missed out on a lot of things with my daughters. And I feel like later in life they'll understand. But going through it, it's certainly not easy. And a single mother, and I had to make sure that I did everything to get them off to college. So this year has been very, very special because I brought my youngest to college in Charleston, and she had a lot of difficulty. And I was able to help her and provide her with the tutoring and the attention and the professionals that she needed to get her to a place where she got into her top 6 colleges. And there were a lot of people that doubted her. They doubted that she would even get into one. So I felt very good about that, having the resources to help her, because there are a lot of kids out there that don't get the help that they need. And there are so many kids that, especially now, as Congresswoman Trahan said, these kids are just overpowered by social media and the content that they see, and their sense of reality is skewed, and it's very hard to control that. And no matter what we do, they seem to be comparing themselves to unrealistic standards or benchmarks. And I think that it's something we as a society, as mothers of children, we have to really watch that, because it's eroding their sense of reality, in my opinion. I think that it's a fundamental issue, and it's a difficult one, because it's not easy to say, put your social media off, because we all know that they are up there quickly and they're back at it. So I definitely think there are more challenges in bringing up young people today, and as a society we have to really stick together and try to change the traditional approach to education and childcare to make sure that we're harvesting an environment that allows young people to believe in themselves and to follow their best interests. And I think that for me, I was always very focused on what I wanted to do and what I had to do to be successful. And I worked very hard. And in doing that, I took advantage of a lot of opportunities. And I had the privilege and benefit of working in a lot of environments where I actually was part of creating something, creating a vision, taking land, taking parts of land, pieces of land, and building communities, engineering and permitting. And one of the things that Sal and I do very well is that we work on a shared vision, and we collaborate, and we engage with the leaders of municipalities to bring something better to a community. And I think a lot of you know Riverwalk. Riverwalk has come so far. In fact, a few weeks ago, we had a ribbon cutting with the governor, and we unveiled a 1,200-car parking garage with a regulation-sized field above it. And if you haven't been there, I encourage all of you to go over and see it in person, because it's the impact, until you're physically there, you just don't realize how amazing it is. It's absolutely beautiful. It's on the river, and it provides so much opportunity for young people and for residents and tenants, because we have a track around it. It services multiple sports, so lacrosse and field hockey and football, and you see Pop Warner up there. And one of Sal's drivers, again, we have a family foundation, and one of Sal's missions is really to give back to the community in several different ways, but they're mostly targeting children, young people, and education. And so it was really special to see the ribbon cutting there and to see the governor there, one of his last ribbon cuttings before he leaves office. And the current administration has been extremely helpful to us. But that garage, I think, sets the tone for Lawrence, and that's a big statement. And there's a lot of promise and pride that this field and the green space that we provide is giving to the community. The other thing is we are have embarked on another very large transformation of Littleton. A lot of people know IBM in Littleton, the old IBM facility, 42 acres on 495. And again, that was just IBM exited the facility. It's 500,000 square feet, and left a big hole, a big unknown for the town of Littleton. And part of what we do is we work with municipalities, and we went in and we were successful in securing the bid to purchase that property. And in doing that, we were able to work with the town manager and the city council members, and we rezoned the property and we got it permitted for a mixed-use community that really complements what their vision is for a town. And I think that's something that I love about my work, is I love meeting people and working together and collaborating. It's the greatest gift for me because I have built so many relationships. And I think a lot of people know that, you know, if we have to get to someone, or if we have a question, or if we want to learn about something, I usually have the ability to get to the person. And it's one of the most important things that I will say to everyone in this room is don't stop building your network. Your network and your relationships will catapult you forward in this industry. Everything is relationship driven. And it's amazing when you call someone and they know who you are and they have respect for you, and you give them a question that you might have, or if you want to pass on an introduction of someone you might know, it's a warm introduction, and it does make a difference. And so I think that two things I would like to stop and leave everyone with is that one is the most important thing I learned going through life is write your own story. Don't be afraid to write your own story. Don't be afraid to challenge tradition, family beliefs. You know, we always think our parents are right, and sometimes they're not. So you have to redefine who you are. And you have to figure out, what are my values? What's important to me? What do I love? Where do I see myself in the future? Those are all extremely important things. And you have to remember that there is only one of you, only one. And you're unique, and everything about you is special. And everything about you matters. So don't be afraid to write your story. The other thing that I'll leave you with is listen. Listening is the most powerful thing that you can do, whether you're a mother, a friend, a colleague. Listening is something that we forget about. And when you listen, it's not just about listening, it's about listening with interest and being genuine. Because if you listen and you care about what that person is saying, you connect like it's just magic. It's really magic. And you learn things about people. So one of the ways that I've really excelled in my career is by just listening. It's amazing. And you don't have to spend a lot of effort or time. You just have to sit there and absorb what's being said. So just a couple of little seeds from what I do, and I look forward to seeing all of you and continuing to build our relationships and move forward as a community that is truly concerned about the future of our young people.
Thank you. Before I introduce Nancy, our next speaker, I'd like to thank our sponsors. So our title sponsor is TD Bank, sitting right up here. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. And our supporting sponsors are Lowell 5, Lawrence Community Television, and of course, here we are at the Phoenician and Michael's Function Hall. So thank you everyone so much for your support. Nancy Gardella was appointed earlier this year as the Executive Director of the North of Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau, the official regional tourism council for Essex County. Nancy's work in the nonprofit sector has included economic development, marketing, community organizing, and volunteer management with the Martha's Vineyard Chamber of Commerce, United Way, and the Y in Cambridge and Central Mass. Nancy is passionate about promoting Essex County as a premier destination and fostering collaborations that foster successful economic development. Nancy.
I want to share a brief story. But first I want to thank Joe and Michael for inviting me here. And I get to sit at this table with these amazing women and face all of you today. And I'm deeply honored to be here because I've only been in the job a few months. And a couple of months ago, in August, I went to the signing of a bill, and it was the Women's Rights History Trail Bill. And this is a bill that took several years to work its way through the state legislature, getting over the finish line thanks to the Women's Legislative Caucus and the belief of the governor and lieutenant governor, a lot of the lieutenant governor. And so this bill was quietly signed in Worcester. And I went to the event, and then I went to visit my dad in Worcester. And my dad's a pretty enlightened guy, I like to think of it. And he said to me, why does a bill like that have to exist? I mean, why does there have to be a women's rights history trail bill? And at first I was insulted, like, only a guy. And then I realized he's legitimately asking me this. And in 2022, we finally got recognition for the contributions that women have made in Massachusetts history. Thank you, Joe. And I was in beautiful Mechanics Hall in Worcester, and up beside the countless pictures of old men, and you know how these portraits, historic portraits go, right? Nobody's smiling, they're looking like they all have, a tooth decay. I mean, it's just a nightmare. And there are women up there now. And I was sitting next to a state legislator who had helped move this through the caucus. And she said to me, this is really important. It's important for girls to see themselves up there and to realize that girls have been part of this, that women have been part of our history and the evolution of Massachusetts and the evolution of our country and the evolution of the world always. And I thought, and boys need to see this as well, right? It's equally as important. So I'm delighted to those of you who are men who are here in this room. I'm glad that you're here with us. So I basically have worked in nonprofit management my whole career. I started as a Y person answering a part-time job to do community development at an urban Y in the 90s when the federal government had a balanced budget and they were giving away money like crazy. You could write a grant that said, oh, I'm in a blighted area and we need to make improvements. And the government would write a check and say, yes, go do it, make the magic happen. And we could make things up as we went, which was great. But it also meant that when you start, for those of you who have ever worked at a Y, you know that when you start at a Y, no matter what your title is, you get to do a lot of different things. My hazing at my Y, was being thrown into the deep end of having to manage the community citywide youth basketball league. Well, a few years of doing that, and I felt like I could manage anything. And at the Y, I got the experience to do a lot of that. But most importantly, I got to see that through collaboration, cooperation, and partnerships, and by shutting up and listening, thank you, it's a good tip, I got to hear what people really needed and then try to deliver it, but not try to deliver it on my own, by working with other people. Because there's commonalities and threads in all of our lives. So I'm seeing bankers and insurance people and other industry people here. And I know that you all have to work with your team to deliver the best possible service you can possibly do. And I was fortunate enough throughout my career to have great men and amazing women coach me and mentor me. And I learned a thing that I used several times when I was applying for jobs that I had no business applying for, the phrase transferable skills. And I learned that from another woman leader who said, if you can manage that citywide youth basketball, you can manage time, manage volunteers, work within the community, work within city governments for gyms, because you need a lot of gyms when you're trying to do youth basketball league. And she listed off all the skill sets that took to do one aspect of my job. And she said, think of all the other things you do. Think of all these transferable skills. And I realized as I moved from a career at the Y, from one city to another city, and then at United Way, and then applying for a job as a Chamber of Commerce director on a tiny little island that I had never been to before I went to the job interview, and then coming here to north of Boston, I realized that I had gotten some of the best advice ever. And this is what women do, because women take the experience they have at home. Because I've never had children, but I imagine that having a couple of kids is a lot like running a citywide youth basketball league. And taking those transferable skills and applying them everywhere. I also find, as a professional person, that women do a whole lot of collaborating, right? Women look for wins. And I learned that as a young professional when I had women who came to me and said, don't just do that on your own, let's work together. And that we all win when we have a shared value or shared goals, and we work together, and they come together and they come to fruition more quickly. So there are two speakers following me, so I'm going to wrap up quickly. Sharing with you advice I have no doubt that all of you have either already, because you look like a smart group of people, already know, but that were really meaningful to me. A woman took me aside fairly on in my career, and I had, let's just say, I had blown it. I had made a mistake. And it was a mistake that was out there, and it had trickle-down effects. And it wasn't a life and death mistake, but boy, oh boy, did I feel like a dope. And I was embarrassed, and I wanted to hide. And another professional woman, a little bit more mature than, well, a lot more mature than I was, pulled me aside and said, you know, take this experience of a feeling like you failed with this. Don't internalize it as you're a failure, but recognize a couple of things that will serve you. And she said, get to know the phrase, and don't be afraid to say out loud, I don't know. And then shut up and listen to people who do know. I was wrong. I'm sorry. And most importantly, thank you. So thank you for your time and attention today. Joe, Michael, thank you for letting me be part of this today. I'm so pleased to be in your community, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you all a lot better. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Courtney Inferreri. Courtney is Senior Manager of Heating Operations, where she oversees all distribution of heating products, both oil and propane, residential and commercial delivery, along with accounts receivable, maintenance and development of the operating system, and a member of acquisitions and transitions team. Courtney is about to end her 28th year with the company. Courtney?
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? So thank you for that lovely introduction. Yep, I am Courtney Ferrari. I am Senior Manager of Heating Operations at Hafner's Oil Company. A lot of you will know us in the Merrimack Valley, mainly for our gas stations and convenience stores, but we do have a very large business of oil and propane delivery, both residential and commercial. In 2015, we were acquired by the Black family for Energy North Group Incorporated, also out of Massachusetts. And since then, we've acquired 5 other companies in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and now Maine. And we've grown pretty exponentially in a very, very short time. I have the pleasure of having been able to work with the former ownership, the Fournier family, who are locally still in the area and still involved in a lot of different ways. 28 years, yes, I've been there 28 years. I have to say the core values of both family units, meaning the old ownership of Fourniers and the Black family, hasn't changed much along the years. They are both very family-oriented groups. I have been very lucky and fortunate to be part of both. So we're going to talk about how we look forward. I started off there in a gas station, just in Hudson, New Hampshire. My father ran the gas station and the convenience store for about 20 years. He's now retired. I had a life-changing event that kind of changed my course, and I'm glad it did, because it did for the better. I've been ingrained in this community since 2004. I went into the office. I was working at the gas station to put myself through college and went to school for cardiac rehab, sports medicine, physical therapy, got all my degrees, nothing of which applies today. But I don't regret that decision. I went into the office, started just answering phones at night, started getting myself into the community, getting with the people in the area. I work right here in Lawrence. And I never saw myself as an office person, right? I wanted to be in sports and helping people get better from injuries. And it didn't take long, 3 months, maybe, fell in love with the area, the people, the customer base, the business philosophy, everything. Lived and breathed it from day one. A lot of the times, and Jerry Lynn brought this up, listening, right? I mean, we're on a great panel. We all obviously, I'm going to repeat a lot of things because this is just really great advice as you move along. Spent the first few years just listening, sitting back. As you can probably realize, heating oil, HVAC, propane, truck drivers, very, very male-driven business line, right? A lot of the times I'd find myself being the only woman in the room. We had women managers at the retail sites, accounting, HR, but I sat in rooms with ownership, upper management, and like I said, a lot of the times, it's the only woman in the room. So what I do, I listened. I gathered all this information. And I picked and chose the times. I fully believe in when you're a leader, lead by example, everybody, we want to lead by example and all that, but I'm very much about gathering all the information that I can before I make a decision. Right, wrong, or indifferent, the decision you make, you have to stand by. But you can't make good decisions if you don't know what's going on. So I started picking my points in the meetings about things that were just the way I saw it from the outside. Kind of started putting my way out there, my opinions, right, wrong, or indifferent. They were my opinions. And they started listening. Because a lot of the times with my listening, I brought a different perspective from what people were kind of ingrained in doing and seeing on the day-to-day. And all of a sudden, it was, well, we have this new opening. How do you feel about that? Okay, I'll try it. So I went from answering phones to accounts receivable, credit and collections. I used to do small claims court for the company. And then when we were acquired, I did a lot of our company engagement out in the community. Since I'd been with Hafner since 2004, I had a lot of contacts in the community. So my big focus from 2015 to 2017 was engagement out there. Did a lot of chamber events. Know Joe and Michael really well. Thanks for inviting me here, by the way. In 2017, I got separated. Another life-changing event. And I made the decision to actually step away a little bit. Family, life, balance, really hard. I'm not good at it. I'm getting better. My son was diagnosed late, autism spectrum, and started struggling. So I took a little bit of a back seat, went more to the back end of the company, and focused on him. And we're working on that today. He's 14 and a freshman in high school. Single momdom, awesome. But stepping away and starting that family-life balance also gave me a nice balance at work. We were in so much transition with everything going on between COVID and, the elephant in the room. I sell oil and propane. Yes. It shifted my thought process and how I kind of handled the day-to-day aspects when I started going back in. Jeff Black, the current owner of Hafner's, asked me to try something completely different. So I went from credit and collections and accounting, customer service, and community engagement to, hey, we need to revamp our distribution department. I'd like you to oversee 132 people that are like a lot of men, truckers. So since 2018, I've spent my time trying to streamline those processes. I was nervous at first. Again, found myself as the only girl in the room a lot of the time. How do I gain their respect? How do I get them to trust me? How do I get them to understand? I don't deliver oil. I don't drive a truck. I don't do any of these things. But what I do is listen, and I communicate. And I take the time to pay attention to what they need. I fully believe that we can be bosses without being bosses. We need to be supportive. I learned this from my dad, and now I think about this too. When I worked at the gas station for my dad, he did this thing, and it didn't hit me until I started really have oversight of people in aspects that I wasn't totally aware of. He saw himself as a support. He supported the people that supported him. And though he was just a convenience store manager, but everybody needs chips, gasoline, so we love them. The very first thing he would do when an employee would walk in was thank them for coming in. And the very last thing he would do before he left is thank them for staying. So I kind of took that philosophy and I put that out in the forefront when I was dealing with drivers and technicians and trucks and all that fun stuff. And no, I still don't drive a truck, but I pull one meanly into the garage at times. Sorry. But what I do is I take the time to make sure that they have what they need. If they're having a bad day or something's going wrong, I take the time to ask them what they need, what's causing that, what can I do to help them. We've obviously had some kind of disconnect, right? You forgot to put your check in the envelope, or you forgot to put in that loading and you didn't complete your paperwork. So instead of saying, hey, why didn't you complete that? Or why didn't you do that? That's your job. I say, what can I do to help you? Where did we miss? Do we miss something in training? Do we need to get you in front of something else? Do we need to get you some help? As opposed to the other side. And I'll tell you, that goes a long, long way. Just asking the pure question, being supportive, being that support mechanism. Because those guys, they'll do anything. They really will. And it's amazing. I don't even know where to go from here. So we're ever changing. We're still growing. Lori had left, and as a matter of fact, right before I came here, I'm going to address the elephant in the room slightly, not too much, but I just signed the last contract for LIHEAP to be a fuel provider for the fuel assistance to help the community with the ever-growing costs. We've been working really hard to streamline our processes and our areas and bring some more singularity to our different markets. Like I said, we're now in 3 states, and juggling that is really hard. We're also facing the same employee shortages. I mean, everybody watches the news, truck shortages, driver shortages, all of that. So we're rethinking our business philosophies, and we get together often, and there's many of us. Oh, and this year, this is a nice attaboy for women, hired my first woman propane delivery driver, and we also have our first woman burner service technician. So, yes, long time coming. 28 years trying to find them, and they're absolutely great, and I'd like to say they're probably our best. But no. So I'm just going to continue working to try to streamline, be a good, mentor and boss for the people that are around me. And I'm just going to sit and I'm going to continue to listen to the needs that everybody has, and hopefully I can help them. But that's it.
Thank you so much, Courtney. And our last speaker for today is Van Lee. Van Lee started her first business in 2005 in Houston, Texas. Now she is the owner of Lily Nails and Lash in Andover. She recently celebrated her ribbon cutting for both businesses in the Loop here in Methuen, Gong Cha Methuen and Methuen Nails and Lash. Let's welcome Van.
So hi everybody. I don't know when I start my story, but thank you, Michael and Joe. This is a big opportunity for me. I started my business in 2001. 2005. It's been a while. But living here in Methuen, and my business is Houston, Texas. It's kind of difficult for me. Having a first kid in 2004, so my kid only a couple months when I have my first business over there. So I have to fly back and forth, and my husband not gonna happy with that at that moment, not at all. So, and then after a year or two, I opened another one, and he's completely He's like, no, that's not gonna work for the kid because I travel so much. So he tried to pull me out back here in Massachusetts. I'm like, maybe. And then it's been for 10 years, fly like a link. And he believed in me. He's like, okay, fine, it's time. So I come in here in 2001 in America, married from my husband. And I don't know what to say. He come from, the family have 6 brothers, no woman in the house. And he not gonna believe it. Woman gonna make the change. Not at all. And the whole his Thai family not believing it. And you remember the year that Hillary Clinton ran for president? I'm the one voting for her, but not him. But now, it's been 17 years in business. Now I own a couple business, and he's believing me now. He give me and thanks him, he's a great man, 21 years in married, and he support me so much. I'm not gonna deny that because he make me change a lot. So I'm very grateful to be here to share in my story. I have 2 kids, one right now in college, just freshman in college in UMass Law, and one in high school. Yeah. And I don't know what to say, but just like she said, listening. Listening is very important. I always willing to learn. And America is great. There's always opportunity for everybody. Willing to work, willing to learn, So I'm grateful to be here. And, I can't believe it, I'm here. My mother will very proud of me if she's still alive. Thank you. My mom is the one doing business for her whole life. I come from 13-kid family. I don't know how she do it. I'm the second youngest. And her whole life is doing business. My dad just stay home, watching the kid, that's it. And I learned from her a lot. She said, if you broken your promises once, no one gonna believe it you no more. I learned it from there. And I still do now. Like she said, listening and learning is always the successful in business. And I have to say, that's true. I have to learn a lot still now. Thank you for everybody for listening.
Again, I would like to thank you all, thanks to our amazing panel, for sharing your stories, your experience, and your words of wisdom. I know I will absolutely take those back to my office and to my home. So let's hear it again for each and every one of them for being here today. It is a little nerve-wracking up here, so I just want you all to know how great they did. So I knew I was going to pass the microphone.
First of all, give Tricia a round of applause as moderator. And let me tell you, I mean this in all sincerity, our Women in Business program is so important to the Chamber. And we have amazing women leaders in the audience. And you saw 5 of them today speak about their challenges, their opportunities. Give them all a round of applause. They did fantastic. And that's what's made the Merrimack Valley Chamber the #1 chamber in the region. The fact that we understand and recognize the importance of all of you. because you are us. You are the chamber, and we work well together. And Tricia is a member of our leadership team, joining others on our leadership board in the Merrimack Valley Chamber of Commerce. But each and every one of your companies is so important. And you can, isn't it true, when we go to visit our companies, we're excited by the opportunities they present to others. And you have to visit their companies. You have to see what they do. You have to learn how they do the business. And you see the kids running around. You see the husband sort of always in the background because they know the woman runs a business. And I mean that sincerely, am I right? That's so true. Sal Lapoli called me earlier, could not make it today, but he wanted to make sure we thank Jerry Lynn for all that she does. Thank you. And I want to tell you that our person at the far end of the table is now, that's you, Nancy, is a new member of our board of directors. Give her a round of applause. And obviously, Courtney is in a very challenging industry right now. We want to say thank you to Courtney for taking the time that you did. And Trish has just moved into a new facility here in the city of Methuen, right up the street. And so we want to say thank you to Trish. But I want to say thank you to all of you, because this is what makes the Merrimack Valley Chamber move forward. And as you know, we have 4 women business lunches each year, culminating with the program at the end, always keynoted by a Congresswoman. She apologized for the way out. She had to get to another program in another city, and obviously we're very, very honored that she took the time to be here. But we want to say thank you for all of you. We know we always run late, and we apologize for that. We're going to start a little bit earlier next year. And please, if you're not receiving emails directly from the chamber, please send us your email address. We'll add you to the roster. You'll see the other programs we do. You know, we do 100 programs a year, and we want to be able to say thank you. So give them a round of applause once again. Thank you all. Have a great day.